Welcome to Ohio Roots, the official podcast of the Ohio Genealogical Society. Join us as we embark on a captivating journey through Ohio's rich genealogy, history, and abundant resources. Hosted by me, OGS Executive Director Noel Poirier, this podcast brings you insightful conversations with a diverse array of guests, from OGS members, chapter leaders, and staff to renowned genealogists, historians, and influential figures within the genealogical community. Each episode delves into fascinating topics and captivating stories. So grab your headphones, hit that play button, and join us on this enthralling journey of Ohio's roots. Today on the OGS Ohio Roots podcast, we're joined by Kim Jurkovic, curator of the Tuscarawas County Historical Society and a seventh-generation Countian. We'll be exploring the Tusk-Kent Archive Room and the invaluable Szymanski Collection, which represents over 15 years of dedicated research into the Revolutionary War soldiers of Fort Lawrence. From the Olmsted Papers to the fascinating county home records, we learn about the tools available at the Tuscarawas County Historical Society to trace your county roots. Enjoy this conversation with Kim Jurkovic. Well, I'd like to thank Kim Jurkovic for joining me on the OGS Ohio Roots podcast today to talk about the Tuscarawas County Historical Society. Thank you so much for being here today, Kim.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm going to start with a question I ask all of my guests. What got you interested in history and your line of work in the first place?
Well, my interest in history started in grade school. And I think it was because in reading class, you had those excerpts from books that you used to read. And so there was an excerpt from a book called Across 5 Aprils by Irene Hunt, and it was about the Civil War. And that got me hook, line, and sinker. From that moment on, I wanted to be some sort of historian. I originally thought I'd want to be a history teacher, but as I grew older, I knew I didn't want to do that. So I just went to college and got a degree in history with really no clear career path as to what I was going to do. Then I went to grad school with the thought of maybe I'd be a professor, but I hated grad school. So I was like, well, this isn't going to work. So I found the public history master's degree program at Kent State University. And so I went to Kent State and got my master's degree in public history. And then I've just worked in the local history field in Tuscarawas County ever since.
And your family, as I understand it, your family's been in Tuscarawas County for a very long time, right?
Yes, my father's side of the family came here in 1839.
Wow. Does that shape the way you kind of approach preserving Tuscarawas County history, having such a close connection to it?
Yeah, it does. And finding that connection that went back so far was such a neat thing. And knowing about I found documents that they came here on the canal, and I've always loved the canal history in Tuscarawas County. So it's all just kind of worked together to fit what I really love to do.
As I understand it, you recently co-authored a book on the manufacturing history of Tuscarawas County. So talk to me a little bit about that book and the research and the resources that went into creating that.
Okay. Sheila Pruney and I, she's at the Reeves Museum, co-authored the book. It was Sheila's idea, and it all started because of the America 250. The Tuscarawas County Convention and Visitors Bureau started at least 2 years ago, bringing people together to talk about ideas and what we can do to celebrate America 250. And then the state of Ohio came out with each of its monthly themes. And so the monthly theme for February was Ohio Works, Innovation and Energy. So we decided that we were going to have the plan to put the book out in February to go along with that. And Sheila's idea came about because she's at the Reeves Museum, so of course the steel industry there. And she was like, what are we going to do to celebrate America 250? Our history doesn't go back 250 years. But then as the discussions went on, it was, you don't just have to be talking about history 250 years ago. We're celebrating America. So she's like, something with industry, something with manufacturing is what we should do. So then she approached me and was like, hey, do you want to help me write a book about the manufacturing history of the county? So that was how the project got started. And then in terms of the sources that we used, it was a lot of everything. There's an 1884 history of Tuscarawas County book, does the early stuff very well, and even by township, by towns lists what kind of businesses were going on in 1884. And then the newspapers did a great job of every once in a while having some kind of progress section so that you could go back and get what businesses were there. There was a really good one in 1914 that was in the Daily Times of all the businesses that were in the county.
Book sounds fascinating. Talk to me a little bit about the Tuscarawas County Historical Society. What's its history?
The Tuscarawas County Historical Society was founded in 1921, so we are over 100 years old. And it was founded by a group of educators and Moravian ministers, and they were looking for the original plat of Schönbrunn. They knew where the spring was. It had always been marked for some time, but all the rest of it had been torn under and was farmland. And so Reverend Joseph Wineland from the Moravian Church found a map at the archives in Bethlehem of the T-shaped street of how Schönbrunn was laid out, and they decided to go looking for it. So there was a lot of interviews done with local farmers, local memories of where things were, and then the minister got the school administrators involved, thinking they were going to like to be involved in this history, and so they formed the Historical Society in 1921. Eventually, it kind of went by the wayside as the Ohio State Archaeological Society took over Schönbrunn Village, and then it was revamped again in the late 1960s as we started heading towards its bicentennial in 1976.
The Historical Society itself is based at the Kent State Tuscarawas County campus, correct?
Yes. Over the years, there were a couple buildings that the society had, but then in the early 1990s, the president of the Historical Society at the time, Earl Olmsted, came to the Kent campus, and I believe the dean was Harold Shade at that time, and talked to him about, what kind of group project could they have together to save the things from the Historical Society and bring them to the campus. And so at that point in time, they were given a room off of the library, and Earl Olmsted donated his personal book collection and then as much of the archival material that the Historical Society had, and they brought it here to Kent State. So today it is the Tus Kent Archives, and it's a cooperative venture between the Kent State Tuscarawas campus and the Tuscarawas County Historical Society.
You mentioned Earl Olmsted, and I know you have something there called the Olmsted Collection. Can you describe what that is composed of?
Yes, the Olmsted Collection is a collection of Earl's books, and there's a lot of different subject matter in those books, and they are all in the Kent State Library. And then it is also his collection of materials that he used to write 2 different books on David Zeisberger and the Moravian missions here in Tuscarawas County.
It's interesting when we talk about the America 250, and we kind of, you mentioned your book, the book about the industry, but we talk about there were people living here when America was 200, starting out. And that's a big part of Tuscarawas County's history, is some of the earliest settlements in Ohio. What kind of collections do you have that speak to that?
We have a lot of the diary material from those missions. The missionaries had to send back to Bethlehem diaries of everything that was going on. So we have a lot of that is photocopies, not the originals, but we have the diaries. We have the Flegel lists of all the people who were in the missions. And then there are a lot of books. And these are actually photocopies also, but a lot of the very early 1800 books even that talked about the settling of this area and the history of that. So they're very interesting, kind of rare sources.
Hi, everyone. Noel Poirier here, Executive Director of the Ohio Genealogical Society and your host for the Ohio Roots podcast. Did you know you can help preserve the past and empower the future? Your donation to the Ohio Genealogical Society helps protect vital family history records and supports research for generations to come. Visit www.ogs.org/donate and give today. Thank you so much for your support. Get ready for the 2025 OGS Annual Conference coming to Sharonville, Ohio, April 29th through May 2nd, 2026. Join genealogists and family historians from across the country for 4 days of inspiring sessions, expert speakers, research tools, and community connections. Don't miss your chance to discover new stories and strengthen your family history skills. Registration opens November 28th, so be sure to register and be part of Ohio's premier genealogy event. Genealogists are always looking for those kind of obscure sources that tell them a little bit more about their ancestor, not just their births and death dates. And I know you hold the county home records for the Tuscarawas County home. What would people expect to learn about their ancestors in those records?
The records usually have a date that they came in. If for some reason they left, other than passing away, there's that date. Most of them have information about why they were admitted to the county home, and then sometimes other contact information, like for relatives and that kind of thing.
Because I know, there's always people like to draw those connections and develop the stories of their ancestors. And it sounds like that'd be an interesting route to go down. Recently,
Yes.
and I've been able to see this particular collection. Recently, y'all received the Szymanski collection related to Fort Lawrence and the soldiers and individuals who were stationed there. Can you describe a little bit how that collection came to be housed there?
Pat Szymanski contacted us. She had been collecting this material for, I believe, well over 10 years. And it started because she had a relative who served at Fort Lawrence, and she went from just finding her own information about her own relative to collecting material on everyone she could find who had some kind of connection to Fort Lawrence. And so last year, that collection came to us, and we've been working hard to organize it, getting some of it digitized, and working with the Friends of Fort Lawrence to be able to get the website as updated as it can be with the names.
I mean, as I understand it, when I had a chance to look at it, I mean, it's not just names though; it's names and the role they played at the fort in some cases. Correct?
Correct. Yes. There's as much like pension record material as she could find. There's letters. There's wills. Everything she could use to make connections. And some of the names she would connect to other family members who didn't necessarily serve at Fort Lawrence, but they also served in the Revolutionary War. So she has those records also. And then different topics that she came across, she would research those topics also. So, like, we have a nice folder of information on latrines from the Revolutionary War era.
That sounds fascinating. I'm sure
Yes.
I'm sure there's a note on somebody's record in there that he dug latrines. Um, you said that you're partnering with the Friends of Fort Lawrence. How is that partnership working in terms of getting people information from the Szymanski collection?
Well, it's kind of slow to get started. We have had a few people come in. They do have on the website that our collection exists. So we have had people who are looking for relatives come to see us from far off places, even to check into the records and see what they can find. And we are working to get the list that she has, the list that's online, and then the other names all sorted out so that we can get the most comprehensive and the most correct, I guess you want to say, list that we can.
I just remember, it's such a fascinating collection, and she did an awful lot of work to pull that all together. If you have an ancestor that you think might have served at Fort Lawrence, you're likely going to discover them in that collection, and that's kind of fascinating. I know, a lot of folks who do genealogy research today do it online. They do a lot of virtual searching and researching. Is there a way for researchers to know what's at the Tusk-Kent archives?
Well, yes and no. We do have a website, tuschs.org, and we have a list of what some of our collections are on that website. We have a few photos that we put on there. I always find it to be a double-edged sword because, yeah, you want to share your information. You want people to know what you have. But at the same time, I want people to come visit us. I don't just want everything easily accessible out there so that they don't need to come and see what we have.
Is it in any way connected to the Kent State's like library catalog?
The books, all the books that are in the collection are connected to the Kent State catalog. So if you get on Kent Link or Ohio Link, anything that says Olmsted Collection, that means it's here in the archives.
Are there particular records at the Tusk-Kent Archive Room that you think would be of great interest to someone researching their Tuscarawas County family?
Sometimes they're needles in haystacks that we come across randomly. Other times they are file folders that we know exactly where to find things. Some of the bigger names in the county, like Knisley, there's lots of Knisley family researchers that come to find information, and we have a big file on that family. The Deardorff family, founder of Dover, a lot of information on that family. The biggest sources are probably the 1875 and 1908 Atlas, and then the 1884 history, which that one is available online. There's an 1895 portrait and biography of Tuscarawas County. That's a good source. And then over the years, we've just had people donate different books that they've put together on their own. And so we have those on the shelves here. We have an archival box collection that includes like Grange materials, American Legion materials, women's clubs. There were a million women's clubs that existed in the county over time, and we have a lot of records as they became defunct. They would get donated to us. So there's lots of little holes in the wall where you can find some kind of information about someone.
I mean, I've had the pleasure of visiting the archive room a few times, and I would encourage folks to get there and poke around. I know, I've found things that you've helped me find that relate to my specific home and the people that lived in my home here in New Philadelphia. So it is a great resource. And you're right, a lot of times those are just needles in a haystack kind of situation. Does the Tuscarawas County Historical Society do any kind of outreach, educational programs, things like that people can take part in?
We do. We don't have a specific set program of speaking, but anytime anyone contacts us and say, hey, can you do this for us? We do it. I usually speak to the Kiwanis Club once or twice a year. We've worked with the Reeves Home. They have a third grade history program that in the past couple of years, I've kind of been the canal person. I do the canal history with them. I'm going into a third grade classroom at New Philly this year to talk about the history of New Philly. And then just other organizations that say, hey, do you have somebody who can come talk to us about whatever? And I say, sure. And if I don't already know about that subject, I research it and figure out how I can make it an interesting program. And we like to use our photographs and things like that as much as possible. We also go to events like Warren Township, their community center history day once a year. Always attend that. Kent State has a summer program, and at the end of that, they have a summer fun program that's out on the lawn. And so we always have a table set up for that. So community events like that, we always like to get involved.
If someone wants to pay you a visit at the Tuscan Archive Room, what kind of hours are there? How do they get in touch with you ahead of time?
We are here Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 8 a.m. until noon. Right now, we are without a phone. So to get a hold of us, you need to email us, which that is tuschs@tuschs.org. Kent State has updated their phone system, and so we need to make a few adjustments to get ourselves back with a telephone so people can give us a call. But stop in anytime or email us, and we'll get back to you.
Well, Kim Jurkovic, thank you so much for joining me today for the OGS Ohio Roots podcast. I appreciate you taking time out of what I imagine is a very busy day to share a little bit about the Tuscarawas County Historical Society. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, a big thank you to Kim Jurkovic from the Tuscarawas County Historical Society for joining us today. We hope this inspired you to visit the Tus-Kent Archive Room at Founders Hall on the Kent State Tuscarawas campus in New Philadelphia to explore the Szymanski collection and all the other valuable resources there. Thanks for listening to the OGS Ohio Roots podcast. If you enjoy listening to the Ohio Roots podcast, we would really appreciate it if you could go to whatever platform it is that you listen and give us a good review. Reviews help us get more listeners and reach more people with Ohio Roots and what we're trying to do with the Ohio Genealogical Society. So please, leave us a nice review, and thanks for listening.
The Ohio Roots podcast is brought to you by the Ohio Genealogical Society, the premier gateway for discovering your Ohio family history. Hosted by OGS Executive Director Mill Poyer and edited by Luke Poyer. Theme song is Beautiful Ohio, recorded by Bob Stanley and his orchestra in 1944. To learn more about joining the Ohio Genealogical Society, visit www.ogs.org.